A different story. A new study from the UK Commission of Bereavement has revealed that bereaved families are struggling after failing to get critical support. 40% of those who wanted formal bereavement support never received any, including children, and the Commission is calling for more funding for services across the UK. So let's speak now to Royal College of General Practitioners and Marie Curie National Clinical Lead for End-of-Life Care, Dr. Catherine Millington Sanders from Marie Curie. Good morning, Dr. Millington Sanders. Thank you so much for joining us. It's easy to kind of ignore, isn't it, bereaved families when you are not one yourself. And yet when you are in the eye of that storm, there is nothing worse. So I guess what you're trying to raise awareness of is we have to think about these people and do what? What do you want to see?
Thank you so much. Well, firstly, it's been a delight working with the UK Commission on Bereavement. It's an independent commission. There are 15 commissioners that reflect diverse professional and cultural backgrounds from across all 4 UK nations, working with multiple charities, and Marie Curie is one of those. The really important part that we're asking for is that we really want that governments in the UK can actually transform people's experiences of grief by investing just 79 pence per person. And workplaces should be able to have a bereavement policy, and schools also should have a bereavement policy. It's really important that we heard from people to understand that we need to really tackle inequalities, to access and ensure that everybody from any community are actually having the right support, are able to access the support in the way that they need it, that's appropriate to their faith, their culture, and their background, and whatever their needs are.
And what are those needs typically when somebody has lost? And is it different as to whether you've lost a child or an elderly person or a spouse? I imagine the requirements are quite different.
So grief is unique for everybody, and it's important that therefore bereavement support is able to wrap around people's needs. And so while most people actually have all the support they need by their families and their friends and their wider community, it's what we heard was that some adults and children and young people, they don't, and they actually need more formal emotional support, whether that might be from a peer support group, a volunteer, or a professional therapist. So whilst we want to make sure that we enhance those supportive networks in our communities, so from faith leaders across schools, workplaces and things like that, it's really important that we also have signposting to formal support services that we can enhance across our communities as well. And these, what we heard is that some for formal support is important because it provides a non-judgmental space, and some people don't have family or they don't have the friends to be able to support them, and we heard that people actually lacked that support. So being able to access for some people is really important, to have that formal support. Otherwise, we see in general practice people develop prolonged grief disorder and complex grief if they don't have support early on.
We're coy about death, aren't we, Catherine? And we are all uncomfortable often talking about our inherent mortality. Do you think that businesses, for instance, should have a bereavement policy like they would have a maternity absence policy?
I think it's so important. I mean, the majority of us will go through grief and bereavement, and we'll lose at least one person at some point in our life. And I know, for example, when I lost my father, I was really lucky that my workplace wrapped around me, offered the support and compassionate leave that I needed for several weeks to be off and to be able to spend time with those people that are important. There's all things like having to sort out the administrative challenges for people. And sometimes that we heard from people in the Bereavement Commission that it just feels completely overwhelming when you've lost perhaps your parent or your spouse or a child. You're having to close bank accounts, for example. You're having to deal with making sure that you've got housing, you're paying your bills. And this is so important that employers actually can recognise the importance of this and support them, because basically then they will be able to come back to work earlier if they get the important support that they need. And they won't need to visit GPs, they won't need to sort of go to health services if they can actually access easily the support within their communities, or they can go to formal support easily.